Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to episode 11, season 2 of Aids to Scouting. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We have Mike Haponski. He is an avid adventurer all over the Appalachian Trail and really, I guess, all over the United States and maybe the world. But I want to hear about those stories this evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike Haponski. Thanks for being here, Mike.
No problem. Sorry about my lighting. Apparently,
It's
it's
great.
not
No,
quite
no,
set up.
it's much better now.
It's perfect.
Okay, perfect,
Now
perfect.
I can see your face. You look a little spooky, but a lot of this is
Yeah,
going to be on.
the underlighting.
It's going to be on Spotify, so it isn't going to matter too much if you
There
Okay,
you
just
go.
perfect.
listen to us.
Good way
Mike,
to look at it.
yeah, Mike. First, if you don't mind, tell me about your. You have a scouting background, and y'all met and were recently together. You were with Elliott down at Camp Thunder. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I've been in scouting, well, on and off, well, on, off, and then back on again. Started long time ago, way older than Elliot. Started a long time ago when I think the scouting program was 3-year program. Weeblos was a 1-year program. I think it was 1983, somewhere in that area. It was probably my first scout camp, or my first scout camp when I crossed over to BSA, Boy Scouts at the time. Started started Pac 909, which is Atlanta Area Council down in Jonesboro, and got my AOL. Then went to the Troop 909, and through there went all the way up through Eagle. Left scouting for college, and then came back when one day I was taking my daughter to school, and there was I think I don't know who it was, came by the school and was pitching scouting, and she was like, "Dad, I'd love to join scouting. Can I join scouts?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So here I am again, back involved.
Hey, well, that's great, Mike. Where did you go to college?
I went to Georgia Tech, so I'm one of the few people that I know that my growing up in the Jonesboro area, I actually drove by my college every day to go to my high school. So my college was closer to my house than my high school was.
That's great. One of my friends, boy, that I helped learn. I helped him with his learning of piping,
Mhm.
bagpiping. Was Brian Forsyth, and he went to Georgia Tech. And
Okay.
what a great credential Georgia Tech is. I mean,
It's
I don't know if you're an engineer these days, but to say that you went to Georgia Tech's like saying, as far as I'm concerned, like I went to the Harvard of engineering schools.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I am in engineering still. I do civil engineering, so I'm one of the few people again that I know that actually do what my degree was for.
That's
So,
great. Well, I know some good jokes about civil engineering, but that they're not appropriate for this for our podcast. We're trying
oh,
to
it's
keep it.
fine.
All right.
Well,
Well,
just in all fairness, Mike Walker is a lawyer, so there's
Okay.
plenty more jokes about that.
hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Hey, I'm Polish, so I've heard every joke that can be said.
you know, I'm kind of thinking I'm going to try to go to Poland next year for the World Jamboree. Do you
Okay.
do you speak Polish at all?
I do not. My grandparents came over from Poland. My
Yeah,
father definitely knew Polish,
yeah,
but did not need to pass it down to me.
yes.
So,
All right. So you got back into scouting, but when you were a scout, did you go up, move up through the ranks and all that? How long were you a Boy Scout?
so I did the roundabout way. I've actually told the story several times, and it sounds like it's actually not too uncommon. Coming up through, it was me and two other boys. We were in the race to be, get to Eagle the fastest. I got to life within 3 years, and then started playing soccer. Hit high school, started playing soccer, and then a whole bunch of other distractions happened in high school. And at that point, it was my dad trying to push a rope. And then when I turned 17, it was my last summer. He was like, "Look, it's now or never. We got to go." And so it took a little bit of prodding, and I heard that's not too uncommon. It took a little prodding to finish my Eagle project. Finished my Eagle project and had my border review. And so I think I was about 4 months, 17 years, 8 months old. So I mean, I was 4 months before I couldn't get it anymore. So I waited till the last second. No palms, just 21 merit badges. And just at that point, it was just finish the job. So that's what I did.
Well, yeah. Tell us, what did you start hiking the Appalachian Trail when you were a scout, or did you start doing that as a pastime afterwards?
So I definitely grew up in the woods. My dad and I used to go backpacking a lot. I have a great friend, still friends with him today. My buddy Jason, and my dad would take me and Jason to the mountains all the time. We did a lot of Pine Mountain, FDR State Park, with the scouts, and then there was many backpacking trips that me and my dad and Jason or some of my other friends would go with me. My dad always, he had one friend that would come with him, and you'd usually be dragging 4 or 5 boys along, all my friends. And then, so we did all that. We did do a lot, I would say in scouts, and it's probably still to this day the most common route on the AT. Yes, I did do the AT. It's, we do, was it Woody Gap to Neil Gap, which,
Yes.
that goes over Blood Mountain. It's probably, every time I'm out there, even today, it's the most common area. I still see scoutmasters with their scouts. So it's a great section, and I've probably done it about 60 times at this point in my life. But
you're kidding, 60?
Yeah, I spent so I did between my dad and my friends and scouts, I did it a lot as a kid. And then, when college hit, I gave up hiking. Didn't give it up. I just had other things going on. Came out of college, started my degree, started my career, still other things going on. And then got married and then had kids. And then it was probably 2017 that I got back into backpacking. So there was a huge gap that I just never went backpacking.
Well, let me interrupt. I'm big on interrupting because I'm aware that some of the folks that watch this maybe in the future or listen to it will on Spotify. I want to say the Appalachian Trail was started in I think the late 20s, but it goes all the way from Georgia all the way to Maine. And so people say, well, what are you talking about? And it's like 2,200 miles of hiking trail.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that we have in the United States, we've also got the Pacific Crest Trail, which is even longer. And then you mentioned the Pine Mountain Trail, and I just wanted to brag or whatever and say that I was one of the original members of the Pine Mountain Trail Association.
Excellent.
And that we started that in 1977, and
Okay.
So it's still going on, and it has a bunch of members. And the Pine Mountain Trail, for you people out there in the world, goes across Georgia in a southwest to northeasterly direction for about 25 miles, but with side trails and all, it has about 35 miles of trail, and it's all in FDR State Park, which means Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which is near Warm Springs, Georgia, which is where President Roosevelt had his home, and Warm Springs was a place he went to for therapy for the polio that had affected him all his life. So that's the short of Pine Mountain Trail.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
So done Pine Mountain. Definitely did Pine Mountain. And again, coming back to, started backpacking in 2017. Did Pine Mountain. That was actually the first trail I did when I came back into backpacking. Met 2 buddies out there. We did the what most people would probably describe as the more scenic part, which is the eastern part versus the western. So did the last, I don't know, I'd say the last 10 miles or so. And since then, I use it as a training ground I did the John Muir Trail last year. A couple of years ago, I was planning on doing the Colorado Trail, but had to cancel because of family things came up. But I use it regularly to like trail run and really get ready for bigger, one, it's less than an hour from my house. So it's way easier to get to than, the AT itself. And it's slightly less intense. So, I think it's 1,500. I think the 10-mile loop that I do might be 1,500 feet of gain. on the AT, you do 10 miles and you might have done 2,500 feet sometimes, just depending on the section. But yeah, no, I love that trail. It's great. I'm in the Facebook group, so I see it all the time. One of the main reasons I get the state park pass for my car is because I'm down at FDR just driving, got that hanging tag. It's real easy to park. So
Yep.
I love that place.
Well, apparently, now tell me about what you just was with Elliott. Y'all were together down at Camp Thunder, and that's for anybody that's listening. That's the Flint River Council of the Boy Scouts, or the Scouting America, and its headquarters is in Griffin, Georgia. But y'all were down there at Camp Thunder on the Flint River, and what was the nature of this function you were at this last weekend?
So Elliot will have to correct me, or at least back me up on this. We were there for IOLS training, which is basically leadership training for the troops. I could not tell you what it stood for. I know what BLUE stands for, but I don't know what IOLS stands for.
Introduction to Outdoor Leadership Skills. It's an
There you
adult
go.
training where they put you through a mild troop level ringer, trail to first class type skills.
Well, I think that some of the people, Mike, that I hope our podcast will reach are adults who are kind of maybe reluctant. I don't really know what's involved and all that, and they don't realize what a vast array of training opportunities the scouts offer to the adults and the older scouts. And so you were there, part of it, and you were a trainer at this event, weren't you?
No, I was not. I know all the trainers. They're in they're in a pack right outside of my neighborhood.
I see. Okay.
But no, I mean, they called on me because they know me. They called on me to help out with some of the hiking stuff since they know I do that a lot. But at least for someone that is outdoorsy, I don't, and I was also a Cub Master for 2.5 years. So I didn't think, I mean, I thought it was a great program, but I'm experienced enough where I don't think I did learn stuff, because there's always, you can learn stuff from other people. But a lot of it was, we had a campfire program and taught people, new leaders how to do campfire program. Well, of course, I've been doing it for 2.5 years, so it wasn't a skin off my back to do that one. Actually, I had a great time. Elliot was the MC. He got chosen. Actually volunteered. Didn't even voluntold. He was volunteered to do it.
I wasn't gonna wait on
fantastic.
somebody to. Yeah, I didn't want to wait on to be voluntold. I was like, do it just in case. Let me do it just in case. So,
well, now you know what? I thought they, because they know me, I was afraid they were going to pick me. Not that I would have totally loved it, but I wanted someone with less experience to do it so they could do it. But I would have done it if they had asked me.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize. Elliot and I were talking about this very point the other day, and a lot of these campfire programs are just great opportunities for the children to learn leadership, how to speak in public, how to sing in public, how to let themselves go, and when they do their skits, how to act,
and how to build a program for it too.
Yeah, right. That's right, and plan. And Baden Powell was real big on that whole area of acting. He was a great actor himself, and he'd wear disguises and do dances and all kinds of stuff. He was really something. But he thought it was all useful for youth, but he also thought it was useful for the young soldiers too. Tell me about equipment. You've apparently developed quite a repertoire of equipment thinking. So
yeah, so this is probably for those who don't spend a lot of time on the trail. This is kind of, I mean, if you ever watch any of these influencers, these backpacker influencers, I pretty much have what they have. But they spend a lot of time on the trail, and so do I. I spend up to about 500 miles a year on the trail. So the stuff that I have, I would not probably suggest to most people unless you just have money to burn and you just like to have really nice gear. And it is really nice, but I use the snot out of it. Mine is, you can ask Elliot. I mean, my backpack's beat to heck, but that's what it's built for.
Cool backpack.
So
even this backpack walker is like something like, I was like, wow, that's right out of a magazine. That's so cool.
Well, yeah, one of the things that I'd like for you to address is water. Do you have water purification equipment? And if so, what do you recommend?
Yeah.
So so I use two different filtration systems. The most popular one probably in the world, or at least United States, is the Sawyer Squeeze. It's really good. It's basically, I'll say, well, I'm already saying name brands, but any standard squeeze bottle, and I'm talking like Smart Water or Fiji water or something like that, just plastic bottle. No, most backpackers don't bring like big heavy containers, Nalgene's and stuff like that. You don't see that anymore. You saw it 20 years ago when I was a boy, but now everybody brings small things like that. You just screw it on the top. You put dirty water in one, screw it on top, have a clean water bottle, squeeze it in. That's one that I use. The other one that I use is God, what is it called? Anyways, it has a small. It's probably the second most popular water filter, but I mean both of them are fantastic. I want to say I'm not going to bemoan it. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but I mean it's really easy to. I mean if you like when you're doing big miles, a lot of times I might just walk by, scoop the water up, put the top on, and just drink. I don't even bother, I just drink right out of the dirty bottle, the dirty water bottle with the filter screwed on, just drink directly out of the filter and just keep walking.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Brave.
Yeah, so
Scout is brave.
Well, what does that does that take care of bacteria?
yeah, it takes care of bacteria. It's a charcoal filter.
Mhm.
I've read in the past. I couldn't verify, but I've read in the past that maybe in Europe you might, because of the densities of population and stuff like that, you might want to chemically treat your water. But yeah, I've drank some gnarly water with that stuff, and have never, and I hope this continues, never gotten sick. And including for your audience, I mean, sometimes you're sharing watering holes with animals and
Yep.
cows specifically. And I don't need to go any further in that, but yeah, I mean, of course, when I've done the Pinhoti Trail as well, which is in Alabama and North Georgia, it kind of goes near Rome. There are some areas where you pass a lot of cow farms, and in that, I mean, I wouldn't drink that water just because of the chemicals, because there's a lot of farms in the area,
Yeah.
and so I don't drink that water. But some of the water I've shared with cows in the past were, more natural. I mean, they were owned by somebody, but they're just ranging around. It wasn't like a industrial farm area like sometimes you find up in Rome, Georgia. So
Yep.
they're fantastic.
Let me ask, if you don't mind, have you ever just said, nah, I'll just drink it, and had something bad happen before?
I have definitely said, you only live once. I've definitely YOLO'd it a couple times. But it turned out well, because, sometimes you just do it and it's like, okay, I'm on almost the top of the mountain. This is a natural spring.
Yeah.
I'm hoping nothing's in it, and it's running strong, so it's not sitting, stagnant.
Yeah.
So I've done that a few times.
But
as a matter
that
of
had
fact,
good luck with it, right?
yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, on the JMT, the other system that I use, it has a plastic bottle that's specific for it, has a different type of screw top, and I had a pinhole, and I could not filter. And so luckily one of my buddies that was with me, he had the same filtration system, so I could usually just use his, and he was fine with that. But when you're backpacking together's loose. He might be 2 miles ahead of me. I might be a mile ahead of him. You walk in different paces, and it's like, hey, I'll see you. I'll stop at the top and we'll have lunch or something. So even though you're together, you might not see anybody for 4 or 5 hours. I've had to YOLO it. I was like, it was hot. It was 90, not 90, but 80 degrees, no sun cover, just miserable conditions. And I was like, it's this, or I gotta walk another hour without water. So you do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Well,
tell me. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I didn't do this personally, but we were at the northern tier, scout property in Minnesota, where the land of 1,000 lakes up in Minnesota. And anyways, this kid said, they told us specifically, yes, you can try it if you want to, but you're more than likely going to get Giardia, right?
Yeah.
And you have to treat this water with iodine tablets or the filtration system. You got to do something. You got to boil it. You got to do something, because you're almost certainly the beavers are going to give you Giardia.
Yeah.
So he said, no, I'm probably immune. He was, it was just some 14-year-old, and we're all out there being 14, and we were all egging him. We're like, go ahead, do it. It was bad. It was
Yeah.
bad. Came out both ends aggressively for hours.
Yes. Look, I
So
mean,
you got to filter it. You got to do something. You got to treat it. Unless it's
yeah.
a spring
Well,
from high up on the mountain.
this kind of to me, I brought it up because it relates also to emergency preparedness
Mm.
and for people being preppers and people all over the world. Water is the number one thing. You can go 7 days, 3 weeks without food, but water is something that is so critical. It's just right behind air in terms of what people need. So folks should be folks at home should have filtration equipment in case they have to drink out of a stream or a creek. And so I just think it's important that as a subject that all scouts and then the younger scout leaders who I hope will be listening to this the patrol leader level boys and the senior patrol leader level will have this same talk with the beginner boys and the Cub Scouts is that be prepared because it might be your whole family could have a real problem without water. And so we learn in scouts, we learn ways to capture water from evaporation, for example, and those emergency ways of getting water. But anyway, so that was water. And now I'd like for you to talk about compasses, maps, and directions, Mike, because I know you'll have some interesting input on that.
Yeah. So, usually, I'd usually carry one of the National Geographic maps. I mean, one, the AT, if you're talking the AT, you're so close to civilization all the time. They hide it really well, even in like places like New York. I mean, in New Jersey, you're still near town. I mean, you're all over the towns. You're usually but you don't know it. But when I was out, I did the Valley 10,000 Smokes in Alaska. That certainly doesn't have any civilization near it. And then of course the JMT is also very remote. Both of which, we had Garmin, the Garmin satellite phones for SOS. On the Garmins themselves, they do have maps that you can use. I didn't have to use it. I have a Garmin watch that also has map capabilities. But I still do. I wouldn't say rely on the paper. There are definitely programs out there, and now that we're all so dependent on technology, I use Gaia GPS on my phone. On the big trails, I use a program called Far Out. A lot of it's GPS enabled. But if you ever have a phone, you lose your phone, you lose your batteries or whatever. That could be a problem. So even like Adirondack high peaks, I always bring one of those National Geographic maps with me. None of these trails that I've done really requires any navigation. I mean, you're following the blazes, you're following the rock cairns, or in the case of the Valley 10,000 Smokes, I was with two guys that are professional guides. They guide for a living, and they actually put the plan together. So they did a lot more of the navigation, but I was always over the shoulder, so I knew where I was. But again, a lot of these programs that I mentioned, they have offline capabilities. So I had the map on my phone. We'd stop and be like, okay, this is where we're at. So navigation is not typically a problem, but when it is a problem, you always want to have a paper map. And so I do, even though I'm an ultralight backpacker, I do manage to carry the 5 or 6 ounces of extra compasses.
Do you
I have my compass.
Yeah, you do carry a real compass, though, right?
I do carry a real compass. Now, I would not say, kind of the joke that we were talking about IOLS. It would, it's probably as good for me as to point me north. I wouldn't depend on trying to, pinpoint anything. But if I had to find a pass to get through, I could use a map and orient myself to get to that pass and maybe find the next trail to get out of town. But yeah, there's most people do have at least a small plastic compass.
Well,
And
that's one thing about scouting is scouting. At least when you by the time you get to first class scout, you should be able to use a compass and a map, at least some, and enough to save your life if if it became important to do that. And so I'm, I always think a map, one of these maps that have all the contour lines and all, it's like reading a book. I find them very interesting, especially if you're right there on that map somewhere or represented there. And so I think that's one of the great things about scouting that people certainly don't get in the school system. They don't get maps and compasses and and any field work at all.
Mike, we were
Right.
talking this weekend about your job as a civil engineer and how you used to have to go to where did you have to get the big rolls of maps in order to
There was a
tell me
store up in Cobb County that they sold quad maps, and
quad?
when I first started my career, I'd have to drive to Cobb County. Well, of course, I worked in Cobb, but there was a shop in Marietta. But now you can download all that stuff for free, USGS.gov. So
USGS.gov. That's what I wanted to. I'm gonna
yeah,
put a
there's
link.
also other programs, caltopo.com. You can pay for a $30, yearly subscription. I actually download a lot of my maps from caltopo. You can trace a pathway, and it'll give you the profile where you want to go. It'll show your profile of the pathway. But yeah, then you can do custom size maps and all that stuff. But usually I'll bring I if I'm like the Valley 10,000 Smokes, I definitely brought a Caltopo printout and my USGS map, but that was, those are the flip ones that you buy at the store for 25 bucks. It wasn't a big quad map, but yeah, they're definitely valuable. And, as my job as a civil engineer, I mean, it's pretty easy for me to, I mean, everybody I think should learn how to read a topo map, but of course I work with them at least early in my career, worked with them on a daily basis. And even to this day, when we're designing neighborhoods or whatever, we're constantly working with contours. So for me to look at a map's like second nature. I know some people it's not.
I thought it was really cool to find out that you could get those maps for free because I was
Oh
like, wow,
yeah.
these are detailed and interesting. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, what was that? Give me that name again. That go put the second name, not the company.
Caltopo.com.
How's that spelled?
Caltopo.
CL. All right.
C like California, Cal, and then
Uh,
topo.
okay. All right. Because we might have people that are listening this in their car and they're going to, well, wait a minute, what's that?
You're
Yeah.
not
We
link in the
missed something so
description.
good. There you go. See, Elliott's right on top of these things, Mike. He leaks. Now, tell me about what you rely on for comfort to lie on. Do you have one of those inflatable pads, or do you normally carry a just a foam pad to sleep on?
Well, I'm old, so I do like my comforts. So I did spring and buy an inflatable pad. So I have an inflatable Thermarest X-Lite. It's, I mean, it's been, you look at all the ratings, it's been the number one sleeping pad for the last 15, 20 years. But I was talking to somebody at IOLS. I think she was a newer leader, and she was asking me some questions about my tent, my gear, and I just made sure to mention. And I'll mention it to your audience. You can get cheaper ones on Amazon, but if you do, make sure it's insulated, because if it drops below 50 degrees, that ground is cold real fast, and more people get cold from the ground coming up than the air coming down. So, um, you know especially the way sleeping bags are designed. If you have all that loft that's supposed to hold the heat, well, when you're laying on top of it, you have just squished all the loft down to nothing. And so there is no insulation, even though there's insulation at your back, and there's no insulation between you and the ground.
When,
There are, go
when
ahead.
I was a scout, I'm talking about 1960, 1959. The assistant scoutmaster had been a soldier during the war, and he said, picture yourself lying on top of the earth. He says, you're not going to heat that earth beneath you.
Mm-mm.
You're just not going to, that's not going to happen. So,
It's not how physics works.
yeah. And well, of course, you're familiar with that hotbed method that's used in the Arctic. And for those who are listening who aren't familiar, that's where people dig out a bed-size shape and they put a big fire in there. And then once the fire builds up a bed of coals, they cover it back over with dirt and they sleep on top of that. and
Mhm.
and that might be the only way you can survive if it's 20 below or something like that. Because I mean, that's you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared in knowledge and in equipment. So keep talking about comfort.
Well,
Go ahead,
So
do you bring a
Elliot.
pillow?
Yeah.
So yes, again, I am an ultralight hiker, but if I'm not sleeping, I'm not going to be hiking well the next day. I actually bring two inflatable pillows just because I'm a back and side sleeper.
Mhm.
And when I go to my side, those inflatable pillows are only 4 inches thick, and after 2 hours, my shoulders numb because all my weight's on my shoulder. So I do bring two. Now, when I was on the JMT, I was trying to cut weight. I had to carry a bear can. So I was cutting weight every way, shape, and form so I could keep my weight down. And in that case, I brought one pillow and just wadded up some clothes and used it as the second pillow.
Mhm.
And I will say, I don't know if it was worth the weight savings. I slept okay, but for IOLS, I slept a million times better when I had my proper setup.
Yeah.
So I do use inflatable pillows, not the big ones. I use the Sea to Summit inflatable pillow. You can find it on Amazon. It's probably about $40.
Mhm.
Use two of those.
$40.
There's nothing cheap about the ultralight lifestyle when you go
Yeah.
backpacking.
Yeah, these things are expensive, but if you do it as much as Mike does, it becomes well worth it, almost necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
I
all
mean,
as necessary.
I wanted to mention something while I think about it. Baden Powell talked about when you're making your place to lie down, you should dig out a little teacup sized hole so that your hip bone will fit in that hole. Because otherwise, without that bit of a hole. Now, of course, if you've got enough of a pad, but even if you have a pad, it's nice to have some kind of a place where that hip bone sticking out can actually sink down a little bit. But
I do something not too dissimilar. Of course, I don't dig a hole. My backpack, I actually put it underneath my knees when I go to sleep. So my empty-ish backpack, I'll slide underneath my knees. So that when I turn, it does create, a little bit of a contour for me. So, but
mhm.
I do something similar. If I slept on a foam pad, I would probably do that. But like I said, I haven't slept on a foam pad since I was 15. I'm not doing it
Yep.
anymore.
I remember I remember when I was young going and my dad had went to the Army surplus store and got several of those green foam pads. You know, the
Mhm.
thin ones that are just they're just you may as well sleep on the ground because
Yeah.
it doesn't give you anything. Maybe a little insulation, but he'd bought like I don't know 6 or 8 of those things, and I figured, well, we're semi doing car camping because it was a training camp out. We were doing junior leadership training JLT. They call it ILST now is the newest version of it. But we were doing the troop level leadership training, and we were doing it at the Ingram's house. They had a farm down near Molina, actually, probably 5 minutes from 3 minutes from camp, really close to where your house is down there, Walker. And anyways, we slept inside because the weather got crazy and we didn't feel like somebody made the call. So we slept inside on the ground. And I stacked up 3 of those those dang foam pads, and everybody else was just sleeping in their sleeping bags on the carpeted floor. I think I got the worst sleep out of all of them. That's how tough those dang pads were. So yeah, foam pad, those are they're just not great. The memory
No.
foam ones that fold up into like a rectangle, those ones are okay. But if it rolls up in a circle, that's for yoga. That's not for sleeping. You know?
I remember
Well,
when those ridge rests came out, we thought it was awesome because it was a foam pad with ripples on it. It was like, oh, this is so much better and so much more comfortable.
Yeah.
They were not any more comfortable than that foam pad that you're talking about.
You may slice a pool noodle in half and just
Right.
sleep on that.
Right.
Man.
how about you talked about saving weight? What do
Mhm.
you typically? What if you were going to go on a 2 night overnight hike on the Appalachian Trail? How much weight will you normally be carrying?
Again, I do this a lot. This isn't going to happen. This isn't going to be for the person that goes out there 2 or 3 nights a year. I've got a base weight of about 8.5 pounds. So
What?
all my gear together is 8.5 pounds plus. I'll carry Appalachian Trail has a lot of water, so I might carry
So you don't
eight.
you don't take a sleeping bag with you, right?
No, I do. That's part of
How
it.
much
It's
does your sleeping bag weigh? God dang.
um, I think it's 18 ounces, maybe something like that.
Oh, is
I
it
use
downfilled?
It's downfill. It's a quilt. So one of the new things that it's not new anymore, but your audience might not know, you don't have to have a sleeping bag. If you have a insulated sleeping pad, which I've already said, make sure it's insulated. A lot of times you can get a quilt, and it's basically a sleeping bag with the back cut out. There's no reason to have a back if you're just going to compress it, right? And so there's a lot of things on the market that are called sleeping quilts, and they weigh a lot less than a sleeping bag does, because you're just not having, there's no wasted material. And so what you do is you strap it. There's little straps that come with these a lot of times. You just kind of strap it to your pad. You inflate your pad. You strap the quilt if it's cold. If it's not cold, like this last weekend, I didn't bother using the straps because it wasn't cold. And then you just lay it over you, and it usually has a sewn foot box, because that's where you most likely you're going to get cold. And then you just lay the quilt over you like a blanket, and then it has a little snap in the back and a pull string, and you just, when it gets cold, you just tuck it up underneath you, and it cocoons you, and you're using the sleeping pad for your back installation, and the quilt, which is like 3/4 the size of the material of a sleeping bag. So, but also with down, I have high quality down. There are much cheaper options out there, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to spend
Just
if you're
tell
going
us
to spend $100 on a sleeping bag, you might as well spend $120 for a quilt. It's going to be a little bit better, and lighter weight. So
God, that's amazing.
Technology is just incredible when it comes to that stuff. I can't even imagine. Like,
And
you've got all the things. Okay, so what do you cook with? Tell me what you cook with.
okay, so you saw my stove. I have what they call a pocket rocket, and I buy a small canister, and it's a isobutane, and you just screw the pocket rocket on top. Bring a lighter, and then light it. And then what I usually do is I have a titanium 750 milliliter titanium pot, which weighs maybe 2-3 ounces. We'll boil water, and I usually just prepare meals that I can just dump into that water. I leave it a little bit soupy because it makes it easier to clean the pot afterwards. I don't want to be scrubbing and all that stuff. So I'll leave it a little bit soupy. I can, there's 1,000 recipes out there, but your basics, rice with beans and bacon bits, that's a favorite, or ramen with some type of, if you like I'm big on macros, so I'm always trying to balance my protein and all that stuff with it. But couscous, you can get couscous and have hot red peppers in it, and a couple other things sprinkled in with some veggies, freeze dried vegetables. I usually carry about 2.5 pounds of food per day is what it costs me, for about 5,000 calories, because you're freeze drying all your stuff. You can buy the expensive prepackaged meals, or you can put them together yourself from grocery store items. I buy in bulk. That's actually how I save a lot of money. Just buy a lot in bulk, and you just eat a lot of you rotate through your 4 favorite recipes, and
Find what you like and just make a bunch of it.
that's it. And breakfast, I do a lot of no cook stuff just because I don't like the fiddle factor of cooking for every meal. I don't even bother. Usually I love coffee. I am not a coffee snob, but I love coffee. And so I just basically 2 weeks before a camp out, I'll usually just wean I'll taper off caffeine. So I just hop up, don't need to worry about, I mean, you kind of miss the coffee, but just the taste of it. But I'll get up, just eat like protein bars and, breakfast bars, or Pop Tarts is a favorite because you're just jamming in calories at this point, right? So we can all eat like kids. And then lunches are like nuts. And I know that, in IOLS, they were talking about GORP, good old peanuts and raisins, right? Good old raisins, peanuts, GORP. I've gotten sick of that, so I try to mix it up. My favorite gas station, and I'm sure yours too, Buc-ee's. They have these great cinnamon pecans. I love getting those cinnamon pecans.
You had some
Metrics
interesting
bars.
pretzel stuff too this weekend too. The butter pretzel balls. That's a calorie packer too, I bet.
Well, that one isn't. It's so we're going to get in the minutia, and I don't know if this is the audience for it, but I look for about 125 calories per ounce when I'm doing big trips. What we ate there, that was just, that means fat. You have to have fat. That's the only thing that's going, because carbohydrates and proteins are 4 grams, it takes, and fat is 9 grams per calorie, whereas the other two are 4 grams per calorie. So it just tells you have to have fat. Peanut butter is a favorite out on the trail. I don't do a whole lot of jerky, even though it's a good protein source. If I do jerky, it's usually like sausages, so they have that fat with it. Because jerky is like 70 grams per ounce, or 70 calories per ounce, so it's really low density food. But I do eat it. Salami, salamis and cheeses that don't need to be refrigerated. You can open it and leave it in your pack for 3 days. That's a big favorite out there. But yeah, for going back to the original question, I mean, going out there for 2 days, the big thing that really should be, you're going to stink. I don't carry a lot of clothes. For the JMT, I was out on the trail for 13 days. I wore the same set of clothes every single day. I have sleep clothes and I have my walking clothes. And that's it. The sleep clothes is only in case I get wet. So, if you get rained on, which does happen, when you're out there for 13 days, you're going to get rained on. So you wear the same smelly clothes, every 3 or 4 days. You jump in a lake and try to scrub off. You try to keep your feet really clean. So I do try to wash my feet 2 or 3 times a day when I'm out there, just to keep, because your feet go down, you're done.
Yeah.
So that's one weight savings, I guess. Really, the biggest piece of advice I have for even all scouts and adult leaders is just be minimalist. Bring what you need, bring a spare. So if you get wet, don't wear jeans or anything like that. Try to, you're going to be going for the fast drying fabrics, which are very prevalent these days. And then bring sleep clothes. And then, yeah, it's terrible getting up the next morning and putting on wet clothes. It's the worst experience in the world, but you know what? It saves you weight. So you keep those sleep clothes dry at all costs, and you wrap it up with your sleeping bag inside of a bag, keep it dry at all costs, and you just put on wet clothes and you go again. I mean, it's just kind of one of those things. It's embrace, well, with your audience, I don't want to say it, but embrace the misery. But you can probably guess what the word is. That's the saying. I think, just embrace it and go.
there's so many topics that I think we ought to hit on here. One of them it makes me think of is boots. When I went, I remember when I got out of law school, there was a friend of mine and his friend were going to go the whole Appalachian Trail. So we started down at the bottom there at Amicalola Falls in Georgia. And it's like climbing a stairway to get up that first mile is horrible. Well, the other guy, not my friend, but his friend, wore brand new boots. And within about the first half day, he had blisters. And you were saying take care of your feet, and boy, is that ever so important. Because that you're done. And in fact, at any rate, so tell me, and I'll get off I'll let you talk in a moment. But the other thing I have a real problem is these modern boots where the bottom is not mechanically connected to the uppers and it has a glue. And if you're hiking along and suddenly that bottom comes unglued and starts flopping on you, you got a real problem. Do you carry glue with you for that, or what?
So if you wear boots on the trail, you are definitely going to be the minority. Rarely do people wear boots anymore. Everybody wears trail runners. So this is something that could save, that the scout masters and cub leaders can tell their kid. There's no reason to go out and buy boots. These shoes that I wear are trail runners. They're basically sneakers. That is very prevalent on the trail. My brand that I like to wear is Topos, but there's like 4 or 5 brands out there that are all over the place. You don't have to have Topos or anything. But I prefer the shoes that have Vibram bottoms. It's a type of Vibram is a company, and they developed this rubber that is so far better than any other bottom of shoe that I've ever dealt with. At the Adirondacks, New York, they have when you're peak bagging in the Adirondacks, you're essentially walking up creeks because New York's very protective of their environment. And especially when you get in those alpine areas, they don't want you walking on any plants. So they just basically put you up the creeks. Walking in creeks all day long with those vibrant bottoms with that slick rock, never did I once slip. My buddy that was with me, he was slipping all over the place. So I would definitely recommend, if you can, get the Vibrams, but definitely stay with tennis shoes. And then if you want, what I'd prefer, I have never had a blister with these shoes, but I also wear merino wool socks. And I'm not talking the real thick ones, but I do wear merino wool. When they get wet, they stay warm. When they don't abrase my feet. I was walking in the Smokies several years ago, slipped off the trail. It was maybe 15 degrees outside. It was freezing, but we were in low elevate. We were staying away from the high elevations. Went into the water. The water is probably, I don't know, 34 degrees, all the way up to my knee. And yeah, it was freezing, but you start walking, and about a half mile later, I mean, that merino wool warms right up. My foot wasn't cold outside of what the air was doing to me. But I would definitely recommend merino wool socks, trail runners. And then I'll bring like Luco tape. And this happened to me on the JMT. My bottom, the rocks there are so bad, the bottom starts separating. They just sometimes happen. And again, when if you're 6 days outside of civilization, or you're not going to be getting off trail, you just take that Luco tape, wrap it around, and keep on going.
What's Luco tape?
Luco tape's a brand of tape you can get, and it's just super, super sticky. It's basically, I feel it's like
Duct
do
tape?
everything tape.
It's not duct tape.
Not duct tape, no, but it's for skin. So you can put out, like, I use it for Band-Aids. I mean, I don't really carry Band-Aids with me.
Yep.
I have this, what I'll do if I had a cut, I had a pretty big cut from a rock, and I just cleaned it out real good. I had the triple antibiotic ointment, put it on there. It was cut pretty deep, took some super glue, threw it on top of it, had, a little piece of gauze in my, bag, put it on top of it, and then just took the Luco tape and wrapped it up, and good to go. Didn't have to bother with the Band-Aid. It held on for about 3 days until I got off trail, or I could, I was cleaning it every night and every morning. But Luco tape pretty much, I mean, a lot of people are wrapping around their trekking pole. It's real easy to carry. They'll just take their trekking pole and they'll wrap it around 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. It's good for blisters. It's good for cuts. It's good for repairing gear. It's just like the do everything. It's basically most people's repair kit.
I need to get some of that. No question about it. Tell me about trekking poles. Do you use trekking poles?
I do. I've gone between using 1 and 2 and back to 1. It just depends on, one, my tent requires a trekking pole. So again, that's why it's so light. I think my tent's like 13 ounces, but it doesn't have it uses my trekking pole. So that weight doesn't count against me. I use 1 at a minimum, but like certain places I'll bring 2. It depends on my weight too. Like on the JMT, I was carrying 7 days of food at a time with a bear can. So my pack got up to probably about 28 pounds, which is heavy for me. So I definitely had 2 poles. If I'm doing a lot of creek crossings stuff, like the Pinhoti Trail, that has a ton of creek crossings, especially when you get up into the Cohutta Wilderness area in Georgia. You're going, I think one day we crossed 22 creeks. It's just a lot of creeks. So it's good for stabilization. In Alaska, we did a lot of crossing of creeks. Sometimes if I'm familiar with the area, like I've done so many portions of the AT multiple times that, if I'm like, oh, we're going to be in, we're doing we're doing North Carolina, Tennessee area. I know there's not a lot of creeks, so I'll just bring 1 because it's just for my tent. So I do use poles. I would definitely suggest them. 3 points of contact on the ground are always better than 2. If you're carrying, any football coach will tell you that when it comes to carrying the ball too. They have definitely saved me. You trip and just all of a sudden you catch yourself with at least 1 pole. If you have 2, it's even better. Definitely use those for sure. So you can get those on Amazon cheap. There's a brand called Cascade Mountain Tech, and they perform just as well as the high dollar ones. And $30 a pair. So I mean,
Yep.
definitely good for kids.
Yeah.
So my
So
daughter has that pair exactly.
Yeah.
So,
What
you
about
said-
what about headgear? What do you recommend for headgear, and what do you use?
so the only headgear I wear is a hat. I wear a hoodie. Not this one, but I'll wear a hoodie to keep the sun off, and then a hat. So that, I mean, I don't get too terribly technical. So I don't have any helmets. I have seen some people that will wear helmets sometimes out there, but that's about as far as I go with it.
I mean,
You know,
do you use a wide brim hat or like a baseball hat? Or,
I wear a running hat. So what I do is I wear a running hat and I'll put it on, and then I have a hoodie and I have a sun hoodie and I'll just pull it over,
yeah.
and so it keeps the sun off me. And I'm very light skinned, and even to this day, I go to the dermatologist and they burn off little spots of cancer on me to this day. So
Yeah.
I'm always wearing something.
Yeah.
you mentioned that your tent requires a trekking pole,
Mhm.
and I had to stop when we were packing up from IOLS. I had to stop by while I was taking stuff to my van, and I saw your tent. And that tent, it's like I don't know how to describe it, but I walked by it and I was like, oh, that looks like Luke's from the Outdoor Boys. And I know he does a lot of the same similar stuff that you do, except he's super famous with his
Right.
kids. And I saw that tent and I was like, I have to touch it. I got to feel it. I got to know what this material feels like. And Walker, I don't know if you've ever seen one of these types of tents, but it's the weight of it is as if you took 6 or 8 Walmart bags and just put them in a pile. That's about what the weight of this tent feels like, and then put a little bird's nest of paracord on it. But it's even the cord on there. It's not paracord. It's thinner yet stronger than the paracord, and it feels like almost like paper almost, but it's not. It's super strong and waterproof. Tell us
Right.
about your tent, please.
So I used to sleep under a tarp, but I've gotten real paranoid about Lyme's disease, especially with all this alpha gal and all this other stuff going around. So I had to give up my beloved tarp, which was the same material that my tent is. It's called Dyneema. It's DCF, Dyneema Composite Fabric is what I think it stands for. Um, it's basically, it was called originally Cuban fiber, and it might still be. And I'm old enough to remember, I think, when it was, what was it, America Cube. We won the sailing race, probably in the 80s sometime. And anyways, there was this cutting edge technology that was Cuban fiber. And so now they make tents out of it. It's really taken off in the backpacking community because it's super lightweight. It has no like abrasion. It's terrible with abrasion, but the tensile strength is incredible. It's super lightweight. It's waterproof. I use the Zpacks Ultraplex, which is going to Zpacks is a big company that does a lot of these tents. There's others out there, Durston, Hyperlight Mountain Gear, all that stuff. So it's an incredible tent.
Is
It
this
again is.
a one person tent or a two person?
I sleep in a one person. I'm very much a minimalist. I just couldn't swallow the extra, 6 ounces it would cost to get a 2-person tent. So I
Oh
have a
yeah.
1-person tent. Too heavy. Too heavy. But yeah, again, when your audience looks it up, they're going to choke on them on the price on it. But like I said, it's like not my gear's not like my little one. She does not have a Cuban fiber tent. She has a regular old pup tent, little a dome tent, which is fine with her. It's durable. You can look up those for your scouts. Definitely a better buy
Yeah.
than what my tent is. But yeah, it's incredible technology.
What
And
about
it's
what about mosquito netting and protection from bugs?
so mosquito netting. There is a company, and I would love for your people to go. It's called Insect Shield. What I do is I buy my favorite hoodie, my sun hoodie, which is a outdoor research Echo hoodie, is my favorite one. I've got 6 of them. And I will designate one for backpacking only. And I'll send it to this company called Insect Shield. You can pay $15. They basically they infuse permethrin, it's permethrin. They put permethrin on it, and it's good for up to, I think, like 70 washes. Whereas if if you do it yourself, it's only good for like 7 washes, or like, if you try to soak, there's a soak method. You can look it up, permethrin soak method. Is only good for 7 washes or like 6 weeks. If you send it to Insect Shield, it's like $15. They'll infuse your whatever you want. You can do socks, you can do shorts, whatever. They'll infuse it with it. They'll send it back. And then I set that aside and never wear it except for backpacking. And then when I go backpacking, I come back and I wash it and I never dry it because I don't want to knock those molecules. And they even see, I think it's probably okay to dry it, but if I'm going to, why bother? If I'm going to use it only for backpacking, I want to be as careful with it as I can. So I use that, and then Percodan, I think, is what I put on my skin. I don't use DEET because DEET eats plastics, and all this gear that you're buying, that your audience is buying, including me, is all synthetic. It's all plastic. DEET is great. Sure, it doesn't cause cancer because they tell us it doesn't, but but it will melt your gear that you just spent all this good money on. So the Percodan does not. I also wear, if needed, I've never needed it on the East Coast. I definitely have on the John Muir Trail, and I definitely did up in Alaska because it was mosquito season. Because the snow melt, we don't have that problem in Georgia. You have this huge snow melt, all those bugs just go berserk because the eggs hatched, and they're looking for food, and there's plenty of water, and they need food, and you're the food.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a head net that, again, real easy to put on. I just put my hat on, my baseball hat, my running hat, and then I put my bug net over it. It has a little drawstring on the bottom. You zip it up, and then I put my hoodie on top of it. And I mean, depending on where it was, the bugs are still pretty vicious, but what else are you going to do? But that's how I usually take care of the critters. Definitely try not to camp near water. I mean, we can talk about campsites and all that other stuff, but I don't camp near water. It's real nice and convenient. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll eat and then I'll walk another 10, 15 minutes to a dry camp that's not near water to stay away from bugs. You can prevent a lot of bug issues by picking the right campsites. Unfortunately, on the AT, especially for big groups, the shelter system that's on the AT is all near water. So if you want a big campsite for 20 kids, you're probably going to be right next to water. So there may or may not be bugs depending on the time of year. But, with smaller groups, I eat at the water, then I get, half a mile away or whatever, just I fill up all my water and I'm carrying all this heavy water. Water's heavy, but I don't go too far, just enough so I can get away from the bugs. So the bugs can hang out by the water and I can hang out, away from them.
Good advice, real good advice.
So,
I know that some places you just can't get away, like in a swampy environment. And
right.
also, some people have no idea how bad the bugs can be in the far north. The biting black flies and the no-see-ums and mosquitoes, and every one of them wants to get you.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and those no-see-ums can get through the mosquito netting, as I recall. And then you need some kind of cream or something on your skin if you want to keep those out, if I'm not mistaken. You tell us.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's just a Percodan, Percodan. It's a P word. It's not permethrin. Permethrin goes on clothes. Picaridin is what I think it's called. There's 1,000 brands out there.
Mm-hmm.
You can get it in spray bottle. You can get it in lotion. You can get these individually wrapped wipes where you just, it's just kind of like at a restaurant after you eat crab or whatever. They have those little wet wipes. This is the same thing. You just open the wet wipe and you wipe it on your skin. Definitely, and they're good for ticks. What I will say is they don't necessarily like DEET will keep everything away. Like the mosquitoes don't even want to be on DEET. When you use this stuff, what it does is you may get bit some, but what it does is I won't get too scientific because I'm not exactly sure, but like I saw when I was up in New York on the AT, I saw ticks, and what it does as soon as the bug makes contact, it swells their brain. And so they go mindless instantly, or pretty much instantly. And if you've ever watched a tick, what it's doing is it's walking up towards warm areas. So it's usually walking up your leg towards the warmest part of your body and trying to get to your waistband or wherever. But these ticks, because I had that the Picaridin on, my socks were soaked in permethrin from the company, and then I had percaratin on my skin. I mean, they were just wandering around. They were walking in circles. They had no idea what was going on. You just pick it up and squish it. So it doesn't necessarily prevent all the bites, but it makes them stupid really quick because it just explodes their brain. So they will, if they touch it, they will die eventually. They just might not be on your skin yet.
Well, yeah, it's my understanding that the rate of Lyme disease is much worse up in New England than it
Yep.
is down this way. I mean, here we have nobody wants a tick bite, but down here you might get Rocky Mountain spotted fever, but that's pretty infrequent. But Lyme disease up north is just a terrible scourge. So
Oh yeah, it's rampant.
yeah.
And they what was the other thing that's kind of happening a lot down here in Georgia? The alpha gen, what was it called?
Alpha-gal.
Alpha-gal, yeah.
So what it does, and I think it's from the, I want to say it's like a spotted tick, Texas spotted tick or something like that.
Yeah.
What it does is it creates after it bites you, you become allergic to like beef, mammal type
Animal proteins, yeah.
proteins, right? So there was, and I mean, I eat a lot of poultry. So I guess I'd be okay. I don't know. But, when you're on the trail, there was a guy who changed his trail name because we all have trail names. He changed his name to Alpha Gal. And so I sat with him at camp one. Like I said, I was talking to Elliott a little bit earlier. It's hard being alone on the AT because it's just so busy. I mean, I go out there quite a bit alone, and almost always somebody will walk in and share a tent with me, or not tent, but share the camp with me. And so there was this one guy walked up, his name was Alpha Gal, and we talked, and I'm like, he thru-hiked the AT, and I'm like, how in the world do you get protein when you're on the trail? It's not like, and he's like, man, it's hard, it's hard. And so that, between after, especially once I got up in the Virginia area on the AT, started getting, my family's from upstate New York anyway. So I was always aware of Lyme's disease. My dad actually had it. And so, that's probably one of the reasons I gave up my tarp is just like, I got enough problems that I don't want to invite something that is easily preventable. So I'm not going to take that on.
So your tent I assume your tent then has a floor. So it's like a unified thing with a floor and a mosquito net type door.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. It's a normal tent. I mean, it looks like just every other. I mean, it doesn't look like every other tent, but it's a standard tent with a bottom. A zip. It has a U-shaped door, and I zip it up every night. That might be a piece of advice I could give your audience too. If you're not, a lot of people, and I saw this at IOLS. A lot of people, they go in and they zip up the net, and then they turn the tent flaps down and they zip it up tight, and everything's nice and tight, and you're just inviting condensation. I sleep 99% of the time with my doors wide open. I mean, the zipper's zipped, but I leave the doors wide open. I wake up, no condensation ever in my tent. That's a big problem, especially when it starts getting cooler. But yeah, it's just a normal tent. So
what's the coldest you've slept out? 10 below, 20 below?
I've never gotten below 0.
Okay.
I have slept in 5 degrees. So I do have a little thermometer that I carry on my backpack. It's one of my
Georgia
luxury
Tech
items.
Yeah, an engineer. That's what, you engineers are that way.
It's funny. It's like I carry it because I'm always trying to stay as light as I can. And I'm trying to push my gear as hard as I can. And I'm trying to find that limit. And I have found the limit a couple of times. So those were not as comfortable trips when I found my limit. But yeah, I slept in 5 degrees. On that one, I was sleeping in my tarp, underneath my tarp. And so when I had my tarp, I just have a tarp and a piece of plastic on the ground, a real thin piece of plastic. But I also brought a bivy, a bug bivy. And the reason I brought that bug bivy is because I knew it was going to be cold. And just having my sleeping bag, I had my sleeping pad and my quilt over top of me, and that bug bivy pulled up over the top of me and zipped it. And it's just like it's like, just a little polyester bug bivy. It's like it's a nothing bug bivy with a big netting so I can breathe. and not put all that put all that moisture in the sleeping bag with me. And I stayed nice and warm, but and I'm in a 20-degree, I'd sleep in a 20-degree quilt. So I mean, I was definitely below what my sleeping quilt wanted me at. But I also have insulated, I do have some insulated pants and a jacket. I mean, you just layer up. It's just like anything else. You go outside and it's going to be cold, put on layers. So I went to bed. I had my puffy jacket on. I had my puffy pants on, and I got my sleeping bag and put in and I was comfortable. But I have definitely not had I knew I needed that setup from previous times. So
Well, tell me about those. You show up at camp and you've got wet tennis shoes that you've been
Mhm,
wearing. I will call them tennis shoes. They're
mhm,
magnificent trail things that cost a fortune, and they've got Vibram bottoms. I remember the Vibram, and I
mhm.
presume the Vibram's tough enough so when you walk on rocks, you don't get bruised feet. But but so at night, do you keep those in the sleeping bag with you, or someplace so that the shoe itself stays warm?
No, what I'll do a lot of the times is I'll take the liners out so that the liners can dry. And I might throw the liners in the bottom of the pack, or again, we're talking. I've got a closed bottom. It's got a closed bottom, and sewn foot box is what it's called, sewn foot box. I'll throw that in there, and it's probably not. It kind of the moisture doesn't just disappear. It probably gets into my bag a little bit. It just kind of spreads the moisture out a little bit, which is if it's going to rain 5 nights in a row, I might not do. But one night, it's like this stuff will dry out pretty much in the morning or whatever. And then I take my shoes and I usually put them in my backpack and put them underneath my knees,
Mhm.
or as an ultralight backpacker, a lot of times I'll take my shoes and my sleeping pad is laying on the ground. I'll shove my shoes underneath where my head will lie, so that my sleeping pad is angled a little bit, and then I'll put my pillow on top, and it just gives me a little bit more angle for my head. So a lot of times my
You're
shoes are actually under my sleeping pad at my head, or they're under my knees somewhere. So I don't leave them out for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. What about, we're going on, and I think what we're going to have to do, Mike, is we're going to have to, since we're keeping these mostly to about an hour long, what we,
Sure.
what I think we need to do is have a part two, and
Okay.
not tomorrow night, but we need to have a part two, and then each one of the three of us think about what did we not cover. And
Right.
maybe ask anybody that listens to send us in notes. They can send it in by email to my email, walker@walkerchandler.com. What else, Elliot? How else can
You
people
could
send a
also send me.
message?
You can DM us directly on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or you can send me an email at elliot@sidewalkchalkstudios.com. All those links will be in the description
Great.
of this video, just like on every video, of course. But also, I want to say this too before we wrap up, because it sounds like that's what we're doing now.
No, I just looked at my watch and I thought
Well,
you got to work in the morning. I don't. So there
well,
you go.
Mike's got plans early in the morning too. He's got to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning or something.
No.
He does. This guy, he's real deal. I don't know if you can tell by this crazy conversation we've had,
That
but
Yeah.
sounds to me like he just goes out hiking all the time.
Well, I'm trying to run a marathon in each state, so I got another one coming up in 5 weeks. So I'm
Really? Are you kidding? You're not kidding, are you?
no, no. I've got
Um, mm,
I did this year I've already run 3 marathons, and I have 2 more scheduled, and I'm looking for probably about 2 more above that, just to probably get 7 or 8 in this year.
just tie it all up for the
you
year.
you remember a few years ago we had a group, I think it was under the Army, but these guys would run the Pine Mountain Trail
Hmm.
both ways in one day,
Hmm.
like
Yeah,
26 miles each way or something like that.
yeah.
I mean, it
I
was
mean,
a
there's a Georgia death race that I've got a couple of buddies of mine we're thinking about doing. It's in the fall, and it's basically running the Georgia Loop, which or no, it's running from basically you run the Duncan Ridge Trail down to the BMT down to Amicalola. I think it's like 70 or 80 miles or something like that. No, Anyways, yeah, it's called the Georgia Death Race, and it is on the BMT, and it's on the Junkin Ridge Trail up in the Pine Mountain or the Blood Mountain area. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some crazy people out there who do that kind of stuff. I wouldn't know any of them though.
You know, when I was when I was a child, the minister of Trinity Presbyterian Church was named Allison Williams, and he would take a mixed co-ed group of church youth and up to Blood Mountain, and they would park down at what's the name of that, Vogel State Park, and then would hike to the top. And boy, and of course all the boys and girls would want to kind of be with each other once they got up there, but usually they were so tired and cold and miserable that they were pretty safe. And but he called it the Royal Order of Mountain Goats, and he had a rubber stamp that you could get stamped on your papers or on your equipment, the Royal Order of Mountain Goats.
That's hilarious. I want to acknowledge our listeners who have tuned in this evening live. We've actually had Megan, the course director from IOLS. She tuned into the show. She said, love seeing Mike on with y'all. The networking you get from different training programs are priceless. And she's right. They are. Jennifer from our course said that those green foam pads are still being used. She's my stepmom. I don't know if you picked up on that, but so she's at my house where I grew up, and those green pads are still being used. Carolina McMean says, woot woot, Mike Haponski. Luke Thomas says that Solomon's are nice, and I think he said that when we were talking about shoes.
Yep.
And then Emily asked you, she was also from our course, says Mike, and then she says that Skin So Soft mixed with lemongrass is what she sprays on her tent and campsite whenever she's going camping for insect repellent. I've had some success with lemongrass, but I didn't know about Skin So Soft. Stephen Lucian, one of the instructors from our course, said that he just found this program and he's enjoying the tips. And then the spotted deer tick. Emily said it's the spotted deer tick. That's the one that the meat allergy. Gosh, I can't even. I know a couple of people now that have that allergy. It's terrible. But yes, I second the part 2 from Walker. And I think we should all bring some of our favorite gear to the next show that we do.
That's right. Hold it up. I want to see a tent that weighs less than a pound. I mean, when I was a kid, I bet you, when I was 12, we were carrying 30 pounds easy, and those big cook kits that the scouts used to have that had the big pot and the little pots all nestled in the plates inside it. And boy, what a mess. And, of course, I think about military things and how people, I don't know, this is just great stuff. Yeah. It's just great how we're offering something, I hope, to scouts all over the world. And even if they can't afford the expensive stuff, maybe they can figure out some other clever ways to make and do things. We'll talk maybe next time about lighting. That's one of the subjects I think we didn't cover tonight. We can cover maybe personal hygiene and some of the more private aspects of that. And different subjects we have. And so any listeners, please send us in a suggestion of topics we might touch on, because obviously Mike knows what he is talking about.
And also, if you know what you're talking about, listeners, and you want to be on the show and you've got some stories to share, send us an email, get in touch with us. I just told you how you can. And if you didn't hear me earlier, just look down in the description below, because you'll find it there. So since I opened it.
Oh, wait a minute. Another thing is I was going to ask Mike, but we don't have time, about critters coming there, like bears and that. And I thought maybe some of our listeners in Africa will talk about what they have to do there to keep from getting eaten by lions. I remember meeting some boys from, I think it was Bangladesh, and people were talking about the endangered tigers. And they were going, we hate tigers because we can't go camping unless it's in an army area that's been cleared of tigers, because those tigers, they want to eat people, and they will. And so we don't have tigers here, but I bet you've had some interesting run-ins we can talk about next time.
I definitely have stories, and it's funny as Elliot asked me, because he wants to get into backpacking, and of course, when Buddy was telling us in class some of the cheaper options that you could do for children, one of my buddies, spring break, we all have trail names. He actually just texted me last night. He's like, "Hey, my girlfriend is just about to get into backpacking." He was like, "Do you have like a list of something that and so that is more affordable that someone who's only doing it a week or two, maybe 5, 6 nights a week,
Mhm.
can you put together a list for me?" So it's funny is Elliot asked me about it on Sunday, and then my buddy Spring Break asked me about it last night on text. So I'll see, depending on when we do this again, I'll see if I can get a quick list. I mean, I know I've had other people in our pack, as their kids were moving up to the troops, were asking me for advice on what to buy. And
Mhm.
so maybe I can get a list together of what I got my daughter. What I did some research for her. She doesn't have super ridiculous top end gear because she's a kid,
Mhm.
and so maybe I can get a list together for you guys and you share with your listeners. I mean,
That'd be
a
great.
lot of this stuff can be bought at Academy, Walmart, REI. Doesn't have to you don't have to go these little custom cottage shops that I go to, but
Well, that would be excellent. So, everyone definitely
All right.
for part 2.
That's great. Part 2. And gosh, it sounds like we might even have to have a part 3 after that. So, Mike, thank you so much. I believe our next session is going to be with Doug Young, who's a history professor up from North Georgia, and we're going to talk about various things about essentially liberty and government and the struggles of history, that what history can teach us. And so that'll give Mike about 2 or 3 weeks to be thinking about episode 2 or episode whatever B. This was
Yeah.
what were we tonight?
This is 11.
11. So that'll be
Season
this
2.
11A. So 11B will be Mike again. How's that
Yeah.
sound?
Sounds
All right.
great.
sounds great, guys. I appreciate the
All
time,
right.
and hopefully I didn't bore anybody.
No, you didn't bore me a bit. You made me think about how rough we had it as scouts. I mean,
We did.
we froze when it was 30 and 40 degrees, and we had those sleeping bags. You could see the light through them. They were so cheap.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were terrible. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yes.